Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our first installation of Conspiracy Corner. My name is Doc Marquis, Vice President of Productions here at Southwest Prophecy Ministry. I'm going to be teaching you folks about an interesting conspiracy, if you would, that's going on at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. Now, I'm sure we all know about the Smithsonian Institution. As I said, it's in Washington, D.C., and it was founded by John Smithson. Now, it was created with the sole purpose of spreading knowledge. Today, the institution itself has recorded 142 exhibits located in 16 parks and museums throughout Washington, D.C. However, for all of its much lauded goals and such, it seems the Smithsonian Institution is failing in one particular area. Now, if the Smithsonian Institute is fulfilling its goal of, spreading knowledge, then why is it there appears to be a conspiracy of silence, if you would, going on within its hallowed halls? There's an article which claims that the Smithsonian Institute had destroyed thousands of bones that once belonged to giants. And I'm going to show you that article right now. The article, which, let me tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, it's not real. This article is not real. But it claims that the Smithsonian is covering up the fact that giants once walked the earth. The reason for this so-called cover-up is so that evolution could become the mainstream explanation of how we came into existence instead of divine creation as recorded in the Holy Scriptures. Now, if it was true that there was some sort of conspiracy going on with the institution, whereas, they're destroying all these bones, that would be shocking to say the least, but that would also imply that someone or someones do not want us to know that the recorded events in the Holy Scriptures are true, and by extension, so is God. And by further extension, if God's written word, the Holy Bible, is true about the giants, then the Bible must be true about everything. Now, let's admit it, this would certainly upset the apple cart of the Illuminati. Now, what I have found to be true thus far is that many bones of the remains of the ancient giants had been shipped to the Smithsonian Institution, but they never made it there. And this isn't just a one-time event. I've found that many, many times, trucks, vans, and other things that supposedly were bringing these remains of the ancient giants to the Smithsonian, they just never made it. No one knows what happens. Now, while it is true that there are giant bones here, here in the United States of America, they are not on display. There are other nations, however, throughout the world that do display the bones of giants, and evidence can be found where you would least expect to look. Recorded in the Bible was the event when Moses sent in the 12 spies into the ancient land of Canaan to, survey the area, see what they may be up against. Now, to the spies, Joshua and Caleb had this to report once they came back. They spent, I believe it was 40 days checking out Canaan, and they came back, they gave a very positive report. As a matter of fact, recorded in Numbers 13:30, Caleb reported, "Let us go up at once and possess it, for we are able to overcome it." Now he, of course, is referring to the land of Canaan. But the first 10 spies, when they came back and gave him their reports, in Numbers 13:32 it says, "And they brought up an evil report." In verse 33 it picks up, and the spies tell us, "And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sights." He's referring to the giants now. Now, if we go by the biblical measurement of giants. They range average anywhere from 9.5 feet to 40 feet in height. In this next photo, you're going to see the one discovered in Turkey in 2011 was a giant's femur bone that was almost 47 inches or 4 feet in length. Going by well-established medical science now, that giant to whom the femur bone had once belonged to stood somewhere around 15 to 16 feet in height. The biblical giant, known as Goliath, he would have been somewhere around 9.5 feet tall, which would put him on the short end of giants. The ones that were seen in the land of Canaan by Joshua, Caleb, and the other 12 spies, according to the description now, would have put those giants on the tall end of the yardstick, if you would. I'm guessing by what I've read, somewhere around 35 to 40 feet in height, because the spies reported that in comparison to those giants, they were as, tiny grasshoppers. So those giants had to have been well on the large, the tall end of the giant scale, if you would. Now, giants also would have left behind, if you would, because of their enormous size, massive weapons. I mean talking, obviously gigantic weapons that you and I could not normally wield. Now, when we look at these stone axes, they were found in a lake in the Kalahari Desert in Africa. Using the man's hand in this photo, the last axe head appears to be around 4 times longer than the man's hand. Since the average the average length of a hand, I should say, is around 7.5 inches, that would make the length of that particular axe head around 30 inches. Now that's just about 2.5 feet long. These kind of axe heads were single-headed tools or weapons. I should say single-handed tools or weapons. No normal human being would make such a large thing for themselves because they could not properly wield it. However, a giant would feel very comfortable with, wielding a tool that was, the head that was about this long. Now, in this next photo, these giant double-headed axes were found in Sumer on display in the Baghdad Museum in Iraq. The axe handles were in a state of decomposition when these axes were found. However, perfect scaled replicas were made and the axe heads were put in as they had originally been found. If we assume the lady in this photo is around average height, let's say 5.5 feet tall, the double-headed weapons on the left and right-hand side stand around 9.5 feet tall, and the center one would be around 11 feet in height. Now, when we look at the top of those double-headed axes, the width of them comes out to be somewhere, by my measurements, 3 to 3.5 feet long. Now, that's as long as a human arm. Now, who else but a giant could possibly wield such a formidable weapon? We're talking something, by what we saw in this photo, that stood anywhere from 11 to 12 feet tall with a double-headed axe head that was as long as my arm. I mean, who could possibly pick it up aside from a giant? I mean, you and I wouldn't make something like that for us. That would be insane. Now, when we look at this next photo, this is a map of the ancient land of Canaan. Now, Canaan is a vast area. Now, when you think about it for a second, I can't help but think to myself, why did God want Canaan, of all places, for his children to inhabit? Now granted, Canaan needed to be emptied of all the giants if God's chosen people were to inhabit it and live safely and prosperously, but why Canaan of all places? In Micah chapter 5 verse 2 it reads, "But thou Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel, whose going forth have been from of old, from everlasting." So wherever this person is, he's always been. Obviously, you and I recognize this to be Jesus Christ. Now, Satan was actually trying to stop this particular prophecy of the birth of Jesus Christ from happening. You see, if we look at the map again, in the land of Canaan, there was approximately, if you go by the numbers in the Bible, the amount of cities and towns and other areas, there were approximately 1 million giants in the ancient land of Canaan. Now when you think about it, with 1 million giants on his side, Satan would have an incredible chance of trying to prevent the birth of Jesus Christ. Because you see, there's a common belief in the occult world that if you can stop one prophecy of God from happening, then you can stop all of them. Because if God was all powerful, then none of his prophecies could ever be stopped. Nevertheless, Satan was going to prevent the instrument of his inevitable destruction from being born in Bethlehem. Well, we pick it up in Matthew chapter 2 verse 1. It begins thusly. "Now when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea," you see, something happened that disavowed anything Satan wanted to do as far as preventing the birth of the coming Messiah, Jesus Christ. It goes on, "And when Herod the king asked his wise men of the birth of the King of Kings, they replied," in verses 4, 5, and 6 of Matthew chapter 2, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, And thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor." So you see, the prophecy was fulfilled, and no matter how desperately Satan tried to prevent it from happening, the prophecy of the coming Messiah was complete. You see, this is why God sent his children into the land of Canaan to clear it out. Because when we look back at that map again, in the center of it, you'll see that red circle, and you'll see where Bethlehem is. It's just about dab center in Canaan, where there was 1 million giants. So God sent his children in to clean it out. This way, a number of centuries down the road, the birth of Christ could happen without incident. Now, much of what we covered, just this little talk, I've written DVDs 9 and 10 in my Secrets of the Illuminati series. Those 2 tapes, that would be Aliens, Fallen Angels, or Antichrist, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Now, I would strongly suggest you folks acquire both of those DVDs, to further your education in this field of study. Now, in our next installment of Conspiracy Corner, we shall continue our studies by going beyond the northernmost border of Canaan and examine what was going on there, and then, vicariously, take a trip to England and other places around the world in our search for ancient giants. Until then, take care everyone, and God keep you.